Alrighty, so our Learn Together week 16. I'm going to have you do two things, as you kind of have seen me do lately. One is I want you to model something new, and you know, this word model is not necessarily what Andrew would refer to what we did in this section in section 10, but really that's the idea of creating objects that model the real world, right? And so, you know, if you want, and this is where I want you to think of something new, right? And it might help. And I actually did just a little looking around, and I thought about, are there some good examples? And so, you know, the often one you see is the one he used, which was person, and then you have persons that have properties, and then persons that would maybe had methods. But then I was looking on here, I'm like, okay, here's another good example, right? Like a laptop, right? And in that, you know, but you'd have to think about laptops have properties and they have methods, and then how you would set up different laptops, assuming you had different ones. So maybe you wanted to make this something more generic, right? Maybe something like device, or, you know, appliance. Appliance is indicative more of a appliance in your house. But in this week, what I want you to do, and this is where it gets a little interesting, I think, with what he showed, because he was showing the idea of creating a game by using this idea of function constructors and methods. Okay, so, and the idea of prototypal inheritance. So what I want you to do, right, and I'm going to show you what I did, but I want you to think of something new, right? And that's the whole thing I started with. I want you to think of something in your life. I sat down today because I had done it on a couple other things, and I was like, you know, I really want to kind of, just for now, is leave all the stuff we've created so far, and I want you to then consider what we're doing here by instantiating or creating instances of objects. And I'll show you again mine so that you can see what I did, right? And then I'll come back to the requirements, and then I'll talk about this. So let me turn to my editor real quick. I decided to use, let me show you before I go this. I actually ended up doing one kind of related to my energy stuff, and then I was like, no, I really want to walk away from this. But this is just an example, right? You create a constructor, and the constructor would then hold the properties of that whatever you create from, you know, using that constructor. So this is where you're instantiating or creating instances of objects based on your constructor. And then these are your methods that are setting on the prototype. And I think he did a really great job of talking about the prototype chain. And in this case, right, creating methods, if you take in values, in this case I was doing pushes, right, and then just doing console.logs. I'm not going to actually have you do connect it to a page. I think I'll do that next time. But for now, right, I just want you to, and I said it in the requirements, but I'll now show you the one I think this is the one I will use this time. Because I was like thinking about this idea. I was looking around my world, and I was like, okay, what can I actually use to model something in my world? And I was like, assets, because I have different assets. I have a car, I have a house, I have a phone, right? And so what I want to know about those assets, I'd want to know what are their label, right? What, you know, so label would be like what the thing is. So like the car is the type of car, maybe, or that's what I used. And then I used a purchase price and a value. And I, in addition, set up another value that was depreciation that I just set up as a blank array. Okay, so that's the thing. I want you to have at least 4 properties, and one being some default values, like if it's 0 or something else, but not something you use when you create the new or substantiate the new object. Okay, so then I want you to create, and I have 3 methods. I actually have 4 in this case. Display seems like shouldn't count, it so easy, right? So in this case, I'm just saying this dot label is valued, and I gave its current value, right? So, and then I did another method where I actually passed, or I looked at this dot purchase price minus the value, And if it was less than 0, then I said, you know, it's worth more now than when you purchased it. So I did some logic in here, and I want to see something. You know, this is telling you, this is what I expect you to look at. And then I decided to do appreciation, where I passed in a year and amount, and I decided to do a push into that array. So I have an array of objects. I don't know why I have that so far out there. And then I did a total appreciation where I iterated over all those entries. So those were my methods. And then on my car that I instantiated, that I created an instance of, again, you hear people say instantiate an object, and that's just creating an object based on your constructor. But you can also just create an instance of that object, right? So now all of my instances, my car, my house, my phone, right, I can have methods that run because those are all modeling things in my world. So on the car, I did do depreciation. And I can do it also on the phone. On the house, it's a little different, right? Because your house doesn't necessarily depreciate because although you do have interest values and stuff like that. So I didn't, you know, I have this on there, but I don't necessarily have to use depreciation schedules, and that's really what this would be. Now, if you don't understand accounting, don't worry about it. This was just something I modeled, and I want you each to select something different to model here. And we're going to use it this week, and we're going to use it next. Okay, so let me move back over real quick and just talk about, now that I've talked about what I want you to do. And again, you don't have to connect this to the page. We will do that next time. And you don't have to come up with something as elaborate as what Andrew did with the hangman game. He's modeling a game, right? But I want you to have a constructor function with at least 3 methods, and I should have said in here, but I will, at least 4 properties, of which one of those is either a default value of 0 or an empty array or object if you want. Okay, so do this, right? Come up with something new, and then give us a link to your and in this case it can just be one file, right? So in this case it can just be this one. For me, like, it'd be asset, and we probably next week need to clean this up a little bit, just because we've been playing around in here. Okay, so this is worth 65 points. So at this point, now part 2. Okay, so I've been talking about this, and actually I want to do this because I'm going to actually open this in another tab real quick. And by the way, it doesn't hurt to search JavaScript real world objects or substantiating objects to get, you know, there's different examples out there, right? So this is the classic example of a car, right? The car model, miles per gallon. So let me go back here. Sorry, I don't want to digress. So here in week, and I'm actually recording this before we head out to Thanksgiving, and I ask the students who have watched it, I ask everyone to do this, but now I only have, as of today, only 2 replies because only 2 of you have done attendance. And I realized I needed to record this learn together before we headed out for vacation. So what I want you to do is, if you haven't already, and you probably will, but you definitely need to watch this because I talk about what I'm thinking for our last develop it. And I'm still not completely solid on what I'm going to do here, but I'm going to make my decision by next week. I need to have made the decision so I can give examples of develop it 5 if we are going to do a develop it. Or I'm going to need to start working on the lectures because I need to do those as well, because I believe I know I said in this video that I actually haven't done this last section that I'm proposing as an alternative to doing develop at 5, right? So what you need to do is, if you haven't already, right, at this point, go watch the week 15 attendance. And I want you to give me, and again this is a more formal reply of what you want me to consider for our last develop it, right? So you know, think about what I've said in this video. And, you know, part of why I've said this too is that as I was looking at what we had done, and really with our developers, right? We had done more transactional data. And there is definitely a way to do that type of, you know, and I call it transactions, but it's basically, you know, a number of objects in an array. But it's handled differently as far as a local storage. And I talk about this concept in the week 15 video, so you can check it out. And we could do this, but I felt like it would have distracted away if we were to continue working on what you've done for Develop It 4 and Develop It 5. So what we'd need to do is start with a whole new idea. So that's part of why I actually did this, because I want you to think about this, because these are good concepts to understand, and understanding the prototype and how the prototype works in relationship to constructor functions. And what's cool about this is next week, by the end of the last section, we end up using a class. And class is really what most people who have come from a C++ or a Java perspective understand, the way that language handles the prototype. And it's called inheritance, but it's the idea of, it's still the same concept of having a function constructor and methods. So in this case, we're changing our paradigm of thinking about our data, adding this constructor function, doing the new, right? So we're calling the new, creating a new object based on our values that we're setting, and returning a new object, right? So ultimately, though, where we end up with is a class. And that's really what, you know, most people who have come from these other languages understand. But I don't want to digress too much. But I want you to, right, if you haven't already, now if you're one of the few folks who have replied, and I've got some good comments here, right? It's not, in Zora, it's not that we won't necessarily learn anything new, right? It definitely is going to be new. It's just that we won't be taking what we've done and Develop It 4 and to Develop It 5. We're going to have to come up with a new concept. So again, definitely new content. It's just that we're going to have to come up with a new concept of what we want to use for our Develop It. And again, it's a little, the other thing about this is it's a shorter time frame, right? So I guess the thing I could consider as well is that we could consider allowing you to do either, right? The thing I would have to do is do both. That's probably where more of the constraint comes in. But, you know, I enjoy this stuff as well. Because Angel, right, he was saying he would really rather do the Develop It, because he's like, well, we could watch that on our own in the coming weeks. So even if you've replied here, I still want you to, because now that you've seen what other people have said by now, I want you to do a formal reply here of what you want me to consider, right, for our Develop It 5. So that's what you have to do this week. And then we are, of course, on holiday after tomorrow. So again, you've probably listened to this. Some of you may do this over Thanksgiving. But because 17 will be similar, my goal will be to actually work on 17 before I head out for Thanksgiving, so you could also take a look at that. Which means I got to move us closer to that Develop It 5, because it's just going to quickly hit us towards the end. All right. When you look at our schedule, you'll know what I mean. We're really at this point down to 2 weeks, right? After week 16, we're really 2 weeks from the end of the semester, so not a lot of time there. All right, give me your input. Do model something new using these concepts that we're learning, and I'll talk to you later.